So I was actually able to try out the open beta for Diablo 4 over the last 2 weekends. And after I already got invited into last year's closed beta, I was really excited to be able to jump back into the game and see what was changed and if they improved anything. Is Diablo 4 going to be the next step forward for the ARPG genre? Or is it another Diablo Immortal? So without further ado, welcome to my, definitely not from Jaws Strife Hayes stolen idea, of telling you of my journey to find the best and the worst ARPG. The beta went live at 5 PM in my area, and after trying to log in, I was stuck in queue for 2 whole hours. This had to be somewhat expected. This beta partly was meant as a stress test for the servers due to the game being more of an MMO this time around. But you have to keep in mind, this was the start of the early access beta for the people that pre-ordered the game, or apparently bought Double Down KFC Abomination. My point being, they had a pretty definitive number of how many would be able to log into the game to try it out. So having a queue for over 2 hours already is not a good sign from the start. After I cooked myself some dinner and continued to patiently wait, I finally was able to log into the game and was booted straight into the class select screen. This looks very nice. It gives off extreme Diablo 2 vibes, which a large part of the fanbase wanted the series to return back to after the deviation of the direction in Diablo 3. In the early access for the beta, you were, for some reason, only allowed to choose between 3 of the 5 classes: the Sorcerer, the Barbarian, and the Rogue. The Druid and Necromancer only started being available in the second week, which made me, a true believer into Necromancer supremacy, very, very sad. After choosing the second best option, I was thrown into a new feature for the franchise: character customization. This is a nice addition for the series, but doesn't matter that much overall. Your character is the size of an ant on the screen for most of it and covered in heavy armor. But being able to choose certain aspects of your appearance is always a nice treat, and it instantly makes you more attached to your character. And if you just thought to yourself that Diablo 4 isn't the first game in the series that had character customization, I'm just gonna ignore that thought and continue ignoring that game to even exist. The character creator also shines in certain in-game cutscenes that show your character close up, which is just really cool to see in Diablo. So after all that, let's finally start the game. The intro cutscene looks really impressive. Or at least I think it does. Because I had a Windows Defender notification right in the middle of the screen that I couldn't click away without skipping the cutscene. I don't know why I am here or what I'm doing here, but I woke up in a cave during a snowy storm and I have to find better shelter. Luckily, right after we killed our first wargs, we found a small village that was having trouble with monsters in a nearby ruin. And because we are, of course, a super mega hyper awesome hero, we instantly decide to help those people and enter the first dungeon. But first, we got our first level up, so let's just check out the skill tree of this game. It definitely isn't the same approach D3 had to its leveling system. It obviously wants to go back to a more D2-like experience, like everything else in the game. But it's still very different. You can't, for example, distribute your attribute points yourself. That's happening automatically like in D3. But you also have a skill tree again, but it's very simplified. You basically choose your base skill, can upgrade it until level 5, choose 2 out of 3 upgrade nodes to enhance your skill, and once you have invested enough into the skill tree, you unlock the next cluster that gives you more skills to choose from. The game is basically built around you choosing one of the skills of every cluster until you reach the bottom of the skill tree. After that point, you can basically start specializing your skills. Choose the ones you want to upgrade to level 5, maybe invest some passive nodes that further enhance your abilities until you reach level 50. But max level in the demo was level 25, so we do not care about that all for now. Let's finally just enter the first dungeon. It's a pretty basic looking ruin, filled with zombies and all other monsters. And after a few minutes, we've already fighting the first boss. Xval, the Scarred Baron. What a name. He's a pretty basic first boss. He basically only has 3 attacks he uses slowly one after another, and he sometimes summons some trash mobs that my chain lightning is swiftly dealing with anyways. One detail I really like here is that these typical AoE markers you see all around in other MMOs aren't simple red PNGs on the ground anymore. They actually look according to their attack. So when Xval, for example, tries to jump me, there's a dusty cloud appearing on the ground, showing me where he's gonna attack. It's a very small change, but it definitely helps me with my immersion into this world. We have now defeated the evil demon baron and returned to the village people, who are holding a small feast for us as a thank you for our troubles. But oh no, they spiked our food and we pass out. Some guy named Oswin picks us up and brings us to some sort of an altar in a shed. Apparently, he gave us to drink from their mother's blood. But before anything else could happen, some bald dude named Yosef comes to save us. So we fight our way out of the village together and enter a church, where we're able to touch some rose petals laying on the floor. Turns out, a horned lady that gets called Mother appeared in this church and corrupted the mind of these villagers. And apparently, the corruption is working fast, because they instantly get granted psychic abilities that they use to punch the priest to death with a metal object, hovering next to their hand, instead of being held in their hand. After that, we talk to Joseph again and decide to head to some hermit that apparently lives around here. So we obviously just break into his home and snoop through his things until he returns. Luckily, he doesn't seem to be American and doesn't gun us down for trespassing. We tell him what happened, and he explains to us that we got infused with the blood of Lilith, the mother of Sanctuary, who basically created the human world. That's also why we're able to see these visions near the petals, because they are areas where Lilith visited shortly before. Her returning is obviously bad, so we decide to head to the city nearby and try to track Lilith down. In the city, we are able to take on our first side quest, Raising Spirits, where we have to walk 5 meters and use the cheer mode to motivate some trainees. Everyone starts small, I guess. But let's continue the main path for now. We head to the merchant, where we have to receive something for the hermit, who is waiting for us at the horse stable. And after we give him what he asked for, we get a cutscene where he is riding away on the search for someone from our vision. And sadly, we cannot follow him because the game doesn't allow you to leave this area during the beta. But that doesn't matter, because we finally are out of the intro and enter the actual game, and you can feel it. Diablo IV has some of the worst rubber banding I ever saw in a game like this, especially in cities where there are more people around. You can basically walk everything 2 to 3 times because you're constantly getting flung around like you're a ball in a pong match. But let's just ignore that. We can finally explore the entire map area. After this point, the game basically gives you complete freedom over what you want to do. Completing dungeons, doing a side quest, farming world events, or pursuing one of the 3, or in this case of the beta, the first act of the game. I decided to start leveling up my character for a bit and farming some better gear. The presentation also does its fair share to enhance the experience. The extremely detailed graphics combined with a bassy sound design and the amazing combat animations result in giving the game an outstanding game feel, even though it can feel pretty simple, especially if you're used to something like Path of Exile. After I leveled up my character to level 10 and changed my armor appearance in the wardrobe that's located pretty much in the center of the city, I decided to continue the main story and had to talk to this lady that told us to travel down to Yelezna and check up on the situation there. But on my travels down there, the game decided to kick me out and back to the character select, giving me an error message every time I tried to log in again, which resulted in me having to restart the game. And after another horrifying waiting session, we were finally able to head to the story mission. I talked to the captain here, who told me where I had to go to find the person I am looking for. But that I should be careful, because a whole escort of knights went missing at the location, together with 2 other women. On my way over there, I found out that one of my gear pieces gave me a free skill point into Blizzard, a skill of the next tier I had to unlock. Obviously, I just equipped it. To use a skill I technically was too low leveled for. Blizzard in itself sadly wasn't that spectacular though. I'm planting an AoE on the ground where enemies take damage in. Having arrived at the location, I meet Vigo, the man I was looking for, and a woman named Nerel, that's claiming her mother went down the mine together with Lilith. After he first was reluctant, he easily gets persuaded by us, and both temporarily join us to enter the mine and find both Nerel's mother and Lilith. Vigo wants to take the lift, but that would be too easy, so of course it's stuck. We seemingly have no other choice but to take the long way down. But it shouldn't be too hard, considering we are 3 people. On our way, we obviously kill more enemies, have to wait for Nerel to open a door for us while fighting more waves of enemies, and finally reaching the bottom of the mine. The Darkened Way. A massive cave that has a map not in the style of the dungeons, but the overworld map. The entrance gate also is decorated with a nice looking statue of a horned lady herself. We also find out why the lift was stuck. A demon got stuck in it. What else? On the other side of the gate, we find the missing escorts. All killed off, but for one, who lies on the ground with just enough strength to tell us about Nerel's mother and Lilith being the cause for this. Convenient. While heading deeper into the dungeon, we find more petals that allow us to see how Lilith seemingly tries to corrupt Nerel's mother. On my way after them, I reached level 17 and unlocked the Hydra heads, basically an auto turret that constantly shoots at the enemies for 12 seconds until it disappears. It also can be instantly recast and only requires a minuscule amount of mana, so it's basically just a constant turret that auto attacks everything while my chain lightning is auto attacking the rest for me. We finally reach the deepest part of the dungeon, where Venard is desperately lying on the ground. trying to head after Lilith, because Venard lacks the divine element that's needed to pass through the lake in front of us. Neyrelle tries talking to her, but she seems to have gone completely mad, lashing out at her own daughter, because she thinks we are trying to steal what she discovered down here, resulting in us having to fight her. And with her, I mean the waves of enemies we have to kill. After we have done that, she dies, and we head back to the church to tell them about the lake and that you need a divine element to cross it. Now we get to do the same thing we had to do earlier. Walk to another quest marker on the other side of the area. You can really tell Blizzard took their inspiration on quest design from only the biggest and bestest. On my way over there, I talked to some old dude who has visions of his dead son near the bridge. Enter a dungeon nearby, free the soul of his son, kill more goatmen, while suffering through the netcode that was written by someone who looks like this, meet up again with Vigo, and get our next real quest. We have to make ourselves worthy to receive a blessing. And how do we make ourselves worthy? By taking a MacGuffin from one shrine to the next, while everything around us gets darkened, until the game tells us that we did enough. After we did that enough times, we actually get an audience with an angel. And just as always, they look imposing as hell. Or probably heaven in this case. But sadly, Inarius doesn't seem to be all that impressed by us and actually denies us the blessing, sending us away empty-handed. And I again only can praise the presentation of these cutscenes. They look stunning and are just beautifully animated and acted, with the cherry on top being your own avatar standing there. I only wish they actually would run smoothly and not like they did for me. After returning to Mother Prava, she just gives us her blessing anyways. Apparently, we do not even need the blessing of an angel, which is fine by me. It just means that I can finally cross the damn lake. But first, we have to find Neyrelle again, that apparently got lost in some forest in the south of this area. Deep inside of the forest, we meet a wolf with missing skin on his face and probably the most deep and erotic sounding voice I had heard in a while. Man, if you want to find out if you are not straight, just listen to this voice.
Admirer of sorts, I saved you in the mountains. You'd lost your horse and crawled into that cave. Would have frozen to death if not for me.
He pulls us into a vision of Tristram, reminding me even more of Diablo 2, and then tells us that he's the one that saved us from the mountains in the beginning of the game. But I wouldn't know that, I had to skip the cutscene. He claims to be an admirer, and that he wants to help us on our journey. He actually also instantly helps us out by teleporting us directly to Neyrelle, which we swiftly help defeating some trees to finally be able to cross the lake. Or not, because we need a special book with a spell that will help us across. Fine. So I quickly do another dungeon to get the book in question to finally be actually able to return to the lake. But we sadly only were able to get a different book that contains spells that were created by Rathma, the first Necromancer. And because Neyrelle is a quick thinker, she instantly realizes that the next best solution would be to just revive her mother that we just murdered to make her use the spell we need for us. Because she obviously already knows it. So we just do that. Give her and her mother an opportunity to properly say goodbye to each other in a pretty fucked up way, but still, and are actually able, finally, this time for real, able to cross the lake. And here is a point where I want to address my biggest criticism with the game. The dungeons. After crossing the lake, we have to head through a dungeon, but it's not a special type. It's just one of the random ones you can find multiple of in the overworld. And that is exactly the problem I have. In the promotions, they constantly talked about there being over 100 unique dungeons from the start, and the number is not true. There are over 100 dungeons in total, yes, but it's just like 6 different templates that randomly generated you a layout. Which in itself isn't the big issue, even though I'm kinda disappointed that they are also using these templates for story relevant dungeons. But as long as the layout is actually varied, that shouldn't be a problem, but sadly it is. After just running 2 dungeons that use the same tileset, you will already start noticing repeats. The same rooms, the same bridges, the same structures, everything looks almost identical. And I can imagine that having to do hundreds can get pretty stale pretty fast. The by far worst offender though are the dungeon objectives in my opinion. Because there are only like 3 of them. Kill all enemies to open the boss gate, collect a MacGuffin to open the boss gate, or destroy some monuments to open the boss gate. And that, in the combination with a lack of visual variety, and also the very samey dungeon layouts, like seriously, they are almost always just a big circle or T-shaped. I can imagine this getting extremely repetitive in the final release. I do not need the most innovative or crazy objectives and designs, especially not in an ARPG. But this game also wants to be an MMO and compete with games like Path of Exile. And let's just say it like this. One single dungeon in Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers has more diversity and creativity than all the dungeons of this entire area in D4 combined. If this game wants to compete with the other big boys in this genre, at least in my opinion, they have to add a lot of variety in content in general over the seasons and future expansions. But let's just continue with the game finally. On our way through this dungeon, we find more visions again, but this time not from Lilith, but from Inarius and Rathma. This was also the point where I found out a lot about Diablo's lore that I did not know about. We already know that Lilith created humanity and the world we live in. So much was clear by the way she was talking in earlier encounters already. What was more interesting for me was the fact that Inarius was the one that created the world with her and birthed the first humans. Or rather, the Nephilim, stronger, immortal humans that actually were the ancestors of normal humans. And Rathma is one of her children. This actually made me so interested that I made a small deep dive in the lore of the series. And look at that! Here we have Lilith in Diablo 2. She may just be a recolor of an earlier boss, but that's her. This entire thing was kinda surprising to me, because I did not know that this much lore about the creation of Sanctuary and especially Lilith and Inarius existed for so long. And it honestly makes me extremely excited for the final game and the story it's trying to tell. At the end of the dungeon, we fight Lilith's Lament, an actual pretty tough boss that tanks a lot of damage compared to anything else we faced so far. He's also just spraying AoEs all over the ground, but luckily we aren't alone in this fight. Some random massive knight suddenly appears and starts helping us out by distracting the boss and also using a holy bubble that protects us from more AoE damage. After defeating the boss, we are able to open up the armor of our Space Marine wannabe and find out that this was actually Vigo helping us. He was put inside of his armor suit, that's basically just an Iron Maiden on the inside, to atone for his prior failures. And he definitely did that by helping us out for a second. But putting these spikes on the inside of the armor probably wasn't the best idea, so he immediately bleeds out after we talk to him. After shedding a single, manly tear, we head on further, just to find the next person dead. Rathma is lying dead on the stairs, surrounded by blood petals. So we touch them and find out what happened. Lilith already found him dead, stabbed by Inarius with his own staff. She definitely seems to feel sad about her son dying for a second, but the sadness instantly turns into anger, and she rips that staff out of her own son's corpse, breaking it into pieces and receiving the key to the gates of hell that was apparently secretly hidden inside of it. After all that, we return to Neril, who dug a grave for her mother to tell her about what we found out. Visibly being sad about Lilith getting what she wanted, while we only lost things, she just slowly walks away. And this concludes the first act of the game, and with that, also the beta. It definitely was a lot of fun. I still have concerns about things like the dungeon variety and the amount of walking you have to do with nothing in between. But overall, the combat feels great, the presentation is stellar, and the story definitely intrigues me. I mean, it got me to read lore pages of the wiki about Lilith, the creation of the world and humanity within the Diablo universe. And that has to mean something, right? But this still wasn't the end of my journey through the beta. This still was the second week, where everyone could just download and try out the game. This time, also with a Necromancer and the Druid. I obviously picked the Necromancer, and I also was able to play the game with some friends this time. We had a great time running through dungeons and just shredding through the masses with a small team of 7. If the game let us leave the city, that is. Sometimes we were just stuck inside. Or we just lagged through the dungeons. They really have to fix this stupid netcode if they want us to play together. Playing as the Necromancer was also a lot of fun. Again, when the game let us have fun. But it actually feels like a good mixture of D2 and D3 Necro. You have a book of necromancy this time that allows you to slightly customize your army, giving you choices between skeleton warriors, mages and a golem, and even letting you customize your archetypes, like giving your warriors scythes for AoE damage, or just not being able to summon them at all, but instead getting a slight buff to yourself. I obviously took every minion I was able to get. The more the merrier is always the way I play this class. There were also some other slight changes to the way the Necromancer plays, like the summoning spell for skeleton knights and mages being the same key this time. You're just summoning one type after the other. But you still have to use a separate key for the golem. After almost no time at all, I felt right back at home. Summoning my army, even summoning a Reaper on my right click that's dashing to the location where I clicked to do some damage. And how else could it be? Corpse explosion. To get rid of all the excess bodies I cannot use for summonings, while also doing some extra damage on the side. Also, listen to how basic Corpse Explosion sounds this time. Mwah, just nice. The only thing that I did not like is that I was unable to command my army, so I couldn't tell them to attack a specific enemy, which is just a minor thing, but I still wanted to mention it. So is Diablo 4, at least in the beta, the worst ARPG? Not even close. The game definitely lacks in variety of content, but the main quest and also the side quests provide a lot of fun. The combat also feels really good, while maybe being a little too simple. This probably could change though, once I'm actually able to fully explore the overhauled Paragon system, or at least I'm hoping for more complexity in the later stages of the game. And I know I haven't mentioned certain aspects of the game, like the in-game real money shop, or that the game is going to have a battle pass, but I strictly wanted to focus on my experience with the beta itself. But for now, I cannot wait for the final release of this game. Hey, if you watched this far, I just really wanted to say thank you. I wanted to do something like this for quite some time, but I wanted to wait for the right moment, and once they announced the open beta, I finally wanted to give this a shot. So if you like this and want to see more, consider giving this video a like, commenting about what you liked about this video and what I still have to improve, and maybe even subscribe to get notified once my next video goes online. And if you want to see some other games than just ARPGs, I'm currently playing through the Resident Evil 4 remake on my Twitch channel. And today, this Saturday, around 4 PM CET or 10 AM EET for my American brothers, we're also going to start the recording for the second episode of the series, where we're going to play through Warhammer 40k Inquisitor to find out if it is the best or the worst ARPG. Again, thank you for watching, and I hope I'm seeing you there.